Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I'm your host Uzma Khan and you're watching Sisters Corner on Iqra TV. In Sisters Corner, we come in each program with different topics, and today our topic is about fostering. Today we will discuss about fostering and different details we will share with you, a lot of information about fostering parents, if you want to foster, and all kind of information about fostering. But first of all, I would like to introduce you with my lovely guest, Davinia, who is working as a manager in Children for All Nations. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
That's
Thanks
good,
for
that's
having
good.
me.
Oh, no problem. Davinia, because the aim to call you here in this program today is to discuss about fostering, and you are the expert person. I don't need to ask anyone else, So first of all, I would like to introduce you, if you can give your brief introduction, and then we will go ahead with fostering, please.
Okay, so my name's Davinia Marix and I'm the Placements Manager at Children of All Nations based in the London Borough of Croydon. We've been fostering and approving foster carers for 20 years now, and we work with all London boroughs.
Oh, great! That's great. It means you have done a lot of work,
Yes.
Actually, what is fostering, Davinia? I would like to know, and obviously all our audience as well, viewers as well.
Okay, well, essentially, fostering is a temporary placement of a child or young person who's unable to live at home with birth parents or family. So it's an arrangement that's arranged by the local authority, and we recruit and approve people and families who wish to offer spare bedrooms and homes that are safe, secure, and provide a nurturing environment.
So, Davinia, fostering, you have said it is a temporary accommodation for those children who have been taken away from their parents due to any reason. So, can these children go back to their parents, or no, not at all?
Every situation is different and every case is different. We have some cases where the aim is specifically to work with birth parents and birth families to rehabilitate the children or young people home. And then there are cases where going back home to birth families is not an option. Children and young people stay in foster care from 0 to 18, and if they wish to make contact with their birth families after that, then that's perfectly fine and their choice.
Okay, and if these children really want to go back to their parents, so what would be the procedure to bring them back to their parents?
The decision of whether a child or young person goes back to the parents is not with us as the agency. The local authority that have the court order for the child or young person to be placed in foster care will conduct many assessments with parents and birth families to see if it's viable and appropriate for that child or young person to go back. If so and deemed so, then the local authorities will work with the birth families, and sometimes our foster carers do too, to rehabilitate the children back home. But that's something that's out of our control.
That's a very good question, actually. It's coming again, something really important in my head. You have mentioned court. Yeah, obviously, this is kind of a bit scary for some people. I would like to ask you about, like, do they have to go through the legal procedure, or there is another way to go back to their parents?
No.
No.
Once it's with a local authority, they place children in care with court orders, and it depends on what order that placement is under. Some children come into care where a parent has actually given permission, and that's under what's a Section 20 of the Children's Care Act, where a parent has actually given the local authority permission to accommodate their child in foster care. And then you have other orders in which the local authority have had to prepare assessments and reports for court, and where it's deemed what is suitable for that child and what's in the best interests of that child. So once a child is in foster care, it is down to the local authorities to provide reports, and it is ordered and directed by the courts as to how and where the child resides.
What are the main reasons to take the children away from the parents?
Oh, there's a number of different reasons, ranging from neglect, abuse, domestic violence, drug abuse, alcoholism. Sometimes the child or young person can be out of parental control, illness. There is a lot of different reasons why a child or young person could come into care.
Okay. What is the difference between fostering and adoption?
Okay, so fostering, as I mentioned before, is a temporary arrangement, and a child or young person can only be fostered from the ages of 0 to 18. After that, they are encouraged to live independently. With adoption, the carers actually become corporate parents for the children. In fostering, that's not the case. The local authority remains corporate parents, usually joint with birth mum, birth parents, and they are the ones that make the overall decisions on a child or young person.
So when we talk about adoption, so is it the only case where, for example, the children are going through the domestic violence and you take the children away from the parents to the local authority, and then children, if they go to the parents wants to go to the court for anything, they can go and then they can return back to their parents. But obviously, if they go for adoption, adoption is only applying for those children who are not going to return to their parents.
That's
Am
correct.
I right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so can you tell me please a little bit more, explain on that point, what are those children? What kind of children are those where they are not allowed to go back to the parents?
We work with some placements where it's called transition to adoption. So a child may come into foster care whilst an adoptive parent is being sought. But that usually happens when a parent is deemed unsuitable or unfit to care for their child. The local authorities do try to work very closely with parents and offer support in order to enable them to have the skills or the accommodation or whatever support it is that they require in order to be able to care for their children. But if those assessments and reports reflect negatively in terms of the best interest for the child, then it can be deemed that that child sometimes is too young to remain in the care system, so a better option for them is to be adopted into a family.
Okay. There's another question was coming in my head, and I have some notes in front of me as well. What is the difference between an independent fostering agency and local authority?
So a local authority are the ones who actually do the assessments on children risk. They are the ones that have the powers to remove a child from a home or a placement if they're at risk or at harm. We as a fostering agency, we don't have those powers. We do not make legal decisions for a child. Local authorities, like agencies, do recruit foster carers who foster for them within borough, but sometimes the children that require foster homes is far much greater than the foster carers that the local authorities have approved. So on those occasions, they will then send referrals out to fostering agencies who are independent and not working under a local authority.
So independent fostering agency is the same as private fostering agency?
So a private fostering, there's a difference between a private fostering arrangement and independent fostering agencies. Independent fostering agencies are regulated by Ofsted. We are there to support the foster carer. We train and approve everyday families who want to offer their help and support and give a home to children. So we are responsible for the foster carers and training the foster carers, supporting them and ensuring that they care and follow the care plan for the child. The local authority, we work with them, they are there for the child.
One more thing, actually, I was thinking about if you go back to the question where you go to the court, if the parents are going to the court to bring their children back to their home. So if the court is ordering for a child to go back to their home, what are the safety measures you take for the children to go back to the families?
So that would all be part of a plan of what the local authority have written up, and that would have been approved via the courts as well. So there will be a transition plan where usually our foster carer will help a smooth transition for a child to go back home. That may be extended periods of contact, and then a child may go back home for a weekend and over a number of weeks, just to ease that child back into living at home.
You mean step by step?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that in that way the local authority are able to identify if there are other needs of support for the parents or for the caregiver of the child in the meantime. But everything that we try to do, we try to do it in a planned way and in a way that's best for the child.
Okay. How about when you are, somebody is interested in fostering and they want to foster a child, so what are the safety measures for those parents? So what do you see when you go to the home and, around like environment, the children, spare bedroom or these kind of, what sort of things you see to foster a child?
So initially what we call is an initial visit. So once somebody has contacted us, inquired about fostering, we will normally conduct what's called an initial visit, and that's when we look around the home. We don't expect everybody's home to be ready to foster on that initial visit, but it's a chance for us to share information and take a look at the space that they have, spare bedrooms, the living areas, communal areas of the home, if there's a garden, etc. And then if it's decided that that person does want to go along with fostering, we have to conduct what's called a health and safety check, and that's when we will go around and check things like the windows to ensure that they've got appropriate locks on the doors, heating, boilers. We have to do gas safety checks. So we do have a stage, and those checks are repeated as well. So it's consistent and ongoing thing that we have to do. So yes, a foster carer's home does have to pass what we would deem a health and safety check.
So foster carers, is it important for them or is it compulsory for them to have a spare room for the child they are adopting or they are fostering, or they can share the bedroom with their own children?
So foster children do have to have their own rooms from the age of 2 upwards. From 0 to 2, it's appropriate for a baby to stay in the same bedroom as the foster carer, obviously because of the care, the 24-hour care that child would need. But past that age, a foster child would need to have their own room. The only time where a foster child can share a room is if they're sharing with a blood sibling of their own.
What about religious obligations? Like many people, like for example, someone is Christian and the family who is fostering is Muslim, or a child is Muslim and going to be fostered by Christian family. So how do they can, maintain their like religious obligations, and how they can be restricted on some points?
That's a good question. Before a child or young person is placed, the majority of the time we like to look at what's called the matching considerations. It's only if a child needs a home in a complete emergency that certain things are kind of, not deemed as important. But, with the majority of the placements, we look at matching considerations. And if we have a family, for instance, a Muslim family, and they are comfortable to care for a child from a different faith, then we would have already trained them and, had discussions and conversations about their limitations in what they would be able to do. For instance, if they didn't want to take a child to a church on a Sunday, what could we do as an agency to support them in meeting that child's needs? Or do they have anyone in their support network that would be able to support them with that? For instance, if they had a friend who was Christian and would be able to help with chaperoning a child to church, or if we had somebody within the agency who would be able to provide that support. So it really is about building a team around the child to ensure that the child's needs are met, but also without compromising the family's beliefs and religious practices.
Okay, that's very interesting, very good information. To be honest, I'm getting a lot in my head today. One more very important question I would like to ask you is, can a single parent be a foster carer?
Yes. Yes, we have lots of single parent foster carers.
Do they have any special measures to be considered?
No, not really. What we do look at are their availability. If they have a support network around them, we will look at the types of children and young people that will be placed with them. And usually what we do with single carers is that we have what's called a buddy system, where we buddy foster carers up with each other so they can support each other, especially if they live in the same geographical area. But being a single person definitely does not stop you from becoming a foster carer.
That's really good for a lot of people who are just sitting at home and want to do something handy, and this is really, really good opportunity for them.
Yes.
Another question I would like to ask you is, if a parent or a single parent is working, for professionals, I like to ask especially, can this be still foster a child? Means their hours are like, for example, 9 to 6, 9 to 5, and the child is like 3-4 years old. So what is the criteria for those parents?
So anybody that fosters, we encourage people to continue working. However, in order to be a foster carer, what we do say is the needs of the child do have to come first.
Yeah.
So I would not place a child who was young or had high needs with a single person who was working or had a demanding job, because aside from actually the physical care that you have to give a child or young person, there are lots of meetings around the child, possible contact, schooling. So it's those type of things that we would have to take into consideration. So for somebody who wanted to continue working full time, a child of that age may not be appropriate. I would consider a child who was a bit more independent, a teenager who, could take themselves to school and, not require to be assisted, things like that. So that's what we would look at.
Okay, that's great. Another question is, if the child is like teenage, or some of the parents, foster carers, they prefer to have small children, or some of them they prefer to have teenage children. So can it be considered for those parents, like whatever their priorities are, according to the children age? Like, for example, if I say I want to have like only babies, up to 2 years old, or 1 year old, or 6 months old. So can we consider that, or once we get registered, we have to follow the procedure?
So as part of the assessment, the former F assessor, and I can talk about the process in a bit, will speak to the family who are in assessment about their preference. And as a fostering agency, we like to keep the preference as broad as possible because obviously we do not control the types of children or young people that require foster care, and we like to be able to offer a range of, you know, carers for children and young people. So we do speak to carers about their preference, be it age, gender, ethnicity, religion, because those are good things for us to bear in mind. However, we do tend, a lot of our carers who have the preference also do enjoy stepping out of that sometimes if it's appropriate.
Thank you so much, Davinia, and I will continue my conversation, but here is a time for a short break, and we will come back to the topic fostering. See you in a bit. Till that, Allah Hafiz.